You think this food is for you? I can smell you from here.
The flight attendant snatched the card right out of the black woman's hand. She grabbed a dented, leaking tray from the bottom of the cart.
Rotten food for rotten people. That's what street trash like you deserves. Take your dirty black hands off my cart.
The woman sitting in 22A didn't flinch. She looked down at the gray, stinking meat, then back up. Her voice was barely a whisper.
I just wanted a meal for my daughter.
The attendant laughed.
Then teach her to eat from the gutter. That's where your kind belongs.
But that woman's 9-year-old daughter heard every single word, and she said one sentence that destroyed that attendant's entire career. Man, saying that in front of a kid, that's messed up. Let's get into it. But before we get to that moment, before that satisfying sentence, let me take you back to the beginning of this flight. Because trust me, you need to understand exactly who Felicity Foster is to feel the full weight of what's about to happen. It was a Tuesday evening in late October. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport was its usual chaos. Rolling suitcases clacking on tile, overhead announcements echoing off every wall, the smell of overpriced coffee and fast food mixing in the recycled air. Gate B34. Pinnacle Atlantic Airlines, Flight 1482 to Chicago O'Hare. Felicity Foster stood in the boarding line like everyone else. No first-class pass, no priority lane, just a regular economy ticket, a worn leather carry-on, and her 9-year-old daughter Nadia holding her hand. She was 42, cream-colored cardigan, reading glasses tucked into her collar, natural hair pulled into a low, simple bun. No jewelry, no designer bag, nothing that screamed money or power. And that was the point. See, Felicity wasn't just another passenger. She was the regional director of operations for Pinnacle Atlantic Airlines, the very airline she was about to board. She oversaw service quality, staff compliance, and passenger experience across more than 40 domestic routes. Twice every quarter, she did this. She bought a regular economy ticket under her maiden name, dressed down, sat in the back, and watched. No uniform, no badge, no title, just eyes, and a little notebook she kept tucked in the seat pocket. It was a quality audit, and nobody on that plane knew it was happening. Nadia was used to it by now. These trips had become their thing. Every school break, Felicity would pick a random route, and Nadia would come along. The girl treated it like a game, a detective mission. She'd whisper observations to her mother, point out small things, the way a gate agent spoke to one passenger versus another, the way a flight attendant's smile would appear and disappear depending on who they were serving. For a 9-year-old, Nadia had sharp eyes, sharper than most adults. They boarded with Group 4, walked down the narrow aisle, found their seats, 22A and 22B, window and middle. Felicity let Nadia take the window. The girl pressed her forehead against the cold glass and watched the ground crew loading bags in the orange glow of the tarmac lights. The cabin smelled like recycled air and synthetic fabric. Overhead bins snapped shut one after another. A baby cried 3 rows ahead. The blue-gray cabin lights hummed low. Felicity settled in, slid her notebook into the seat pocket, pulled out a paperback, something she'd been reading for weeks but never seemed to finish. She wasn't really there to read. She was there to watch. And within 10 minutes of sitting down, she had already started watching. Because that's when she noticed her. Brenda Caldwell, late 30s, blonde hair pinned back tight, senior flight attendant working the economy cabin. 11s with Pinnacle Atlantic. Brenda moved through the aisle like she owned it. Sharp heels clicking, chin slightly raised, a smile that switched on and off like a light. She lingered at row 14, a white businessman in a sport coat. She laughed at something he said, touched his shoulder, offered to stow his jacket personally. Then she passed row 17, a black couple with a toddler. Didn't make eye contact, didn't greet them, just walked by like they were empty seats. Row 19, a white woman traveling alone. Brenda leaned in. Can I get you anything before takeoff, sweetheart? Row 20, an elderly black man struggling with his overhead bag. Brenda glanced and kept walking. Felicity saw it all. She didn't react, didn't frown, didn't write anything down yet, but Nadia did. The girl tugged her mother's sleeve and whispered, Mama, that lady skipped the man behind us. He needed help. Felicity squeezed her daughter's hand gently. I know, baby. I saw. She reached for her notebook, uncapped her pen, and on the first line she wrote the date, the flight number, and 3 words, pattern of selectivity. The seatbelt sign clicked on. The engines hummed louder. Flight 1482 began to push back from the gate. And nobody on that aircraft, not the passengers, not the crew, and certainly not Brenda Caldwell, had any idea that the quiet black woman in 22A was about to change everything. 45 minutes into the flight, the cabin lights dimmed to that familiar blue-gray haze. Most passengers had settled in, earbuds in, necks craned toward tiny screens, a few already asleep with their mouths open. Then the meal cart appeared. Brenda Caldwell pushed it down the aisle from the front of the economy. Another attendant, a younger woman named Shelby, worked the opposite side. But Brenda had the left column, and she was in charge. You could see the difference immediately. Row 12, white couple. Brenda set 2 trays down gently, smiled wide. Here you go, folks. We've got chicken and pasta tonight. And can I grab you some extra water? Wine, maybe? The couple smiled back. Wine sounds great. Coming right up. Red or white? You know what? I'll bring both. Treat yourselves. She placed a napkin on each tray, centered the silverware, adjusted the water cup so it wouldn't slide, like she was serving at a 5-star restaurant. Row 14, the businessman she'd flirted with earlier. She leaned in close, voice low and playful. I saved you the good chicken. Don't tell anyone. A wink, a laugh. He grinned like a schoolboy. She touched his shoulder before moving on. Row 16, white woman traveling with a teenager. Same warm tone, same careful placement. Let me know if your daughter needs anything else, okay? We've got extra desserts if she wants one later. The woman thanked her. Brenda patted the teenager's armrest gently. Enjoy, sweetheart. Then she reached row 18, a black man in a gray hoodie, mid-30s, headphones around his neck. The smile vanished, like someone pulled the plug. No greeting, no eye contact. She grabbed a tray from the very bottom of the cart, not the top, not the middle, the bottom, where the containers were dented and cold. She pushed it across the armrest without a word. Didn't wait for him to adjust his tray table. Didn't offer water. Didn't offer a napkin. Didn't even stop moving. The man looked down, opened the lid. His face changed. Something was wrong. He raised his hand to say something, but Brenda was already gone, already past him, already smiling again for the next white face. Row 19, a young black woman with braids. Same thing, bottom tray. No words, no eye contact. Shoved forward like luggage. Brenda's lips were pressed into a thin line, the kind of expression people make when they're holding their breath near something unpleasant. Row 20, Diane Lawson, white, mid-50s, reading a novel with a cat on the cover. Suddenly, Brenda was a different person again. Voice warm, posture open, eyes bright. Here you are, ma'am. This is our best batch tonight. I made sure to set one aside for you. Diane smiled warmly. Oh, how sweet. Thank you, dear. Of course, anything for you. Just press your call button if you need anything at all. The contrast was so sharp, it was almost violent, like watching someone change masks between steps. Warm, cold, warm, cold. The only thing that changed between rows was the color of skin. Then Brenda reached row 22, Felicity and Nadia. She didn't slow down, didn't look at them. She reached to the bottom of the cart again, past the fresh containers, past the neatly sealed trays, and grabbed 2 battered containers that looked like they'd been sitting there since yesterday. She dropped the first one on Felicity's tray table with a flat, careless thud. Then the second on Nadia's. The little girl flinched at the sound. No words, no eye contact, no napkin. Not even a pause, just drop and go. Felicity looked down. The container was dented on one side. The plastic wrap had a tear in it. A line of condensation ran down the inside of the lid, the kind that forms when food has been reheated and cooled too many times. She peeled the wrap back slowly. The chicken was gray. Not off-white, not pale, gray, like wet cardboard left in the rain. The lettuce beside it was brown at the edges, wilted flat, with a thin layer of slime that caught the overhead light. The bread roll was so hard that when Felicity tapped it lightly against the tray, it made a sound like knocking on wood. And the apple, Nadia's apple, had a soft, dark bruise covering nearly half its surface. The skin had caved in around it like a rotting wound. But the smell was the worst part. It hit the moment the plastic came off. Sour, thick, warm. The kind of smell that grabs the back of your throat and holds on. Nadia wrinkled her nose hard and pressed herself back into her seat. "Mama, it smells really bad." Felicity didn't react. Not yet. She looked to her left. Row 21, a white couple. Fresh trays, bright green lettuce. Steam is still rising from the chicken. Soft bread. The woman was already eating, smiling between bites. Then she looked right, across the aisle. Gerald Davis, a black man in his mid-50s, reading glasses perched on his nose, wearing a neat polo shirt, was staring at his own tray with the exact same expression. Gray chicken, brown salad, same sour smell. He hadn't touched it. Behind him, another black passenger. Same tray, same dent, same smell. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a system. Felicity pressed the call button. The small orange light blinked above her seat. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Brenda was 3 rows ahead, pouring wine for a white passenger. She glanced back at the blinking light, made eye contact with Felicity for half a second, then turned around and kept pouring. Felicity waited. She didn't press the button again. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, expression calm, watching the light blink in silence above her head. 2 full minutes later, Brenda finally walked back. She didn't stop at the row. She stood in the aisle with one hand on the cart, her body already half turned away, like she was doing Felicity a favor by showing up at all. "Yeah?" Not "yes, ma'am," not "how can I help," just "yeah." Felicity spoke calmly, evenly. "Excuse me, I think there's a problem with our meals. The food appears to be spoiled." Brenda glanced at the tray. 1 second, maybe less. "Looks fine to me." "It's not fine. The chicken is gray. The salad is decomposing. And the smell..." "Ma'am," Brenda cut her off. Her voice dropped into that tight, controlled tone, the kind people use when they want to sound patient but aren't. "This is the economy. You get what we have. If you don't like it, don't eat it. I can see the meals in the rows ahead of me. They don't look anything like this. Different batches. They came from the same cart. I watched you serve them." Brenda's jaw tightened. She stepped half a step closer, lowered her voice just enough that only Felicity and Nadia could hear. "Look, I don't know what kind of scene you're trying to make here, but I don't have time for this. You got your food. Everybody got their food. If you wanted something nicer, maybe you should have bought a first-class ticket or tried a different airline, one more suited to your budget." She let that last word hang in the air, loaded, deliberate. Then she straightened up, put on that plastic smile, the one she wore like a costume. "Anything else?" Felicity looked at her for a long, quiet moment. Then she looked down at Nadia. The girl was sitting very still. Her small hands were pressed flat against her thighs. She wasn't scared. She was watching, studying, the way she always did. "Yes," Felicity said softly. "I'd like a replacement meal for my daughter, please. Brenda exhaled through her nose, a short, sharp breath, almost a laugh. We don't have replacements. There are fresh meals on that cart right now. I can see them. Those are reserved. For who? Brenda's smile disappeared completely. For passengers who don't waste my time. She turned on her heel and walked away. The cart rattled behind her. She didn't look back, not once. Nadia's hand found her mother's under the armrest, small fingers wrapping around larger ones. She didn't say a word. She just held on. Across the aisle, Gerald Davis leaned toward Felicity. His voice was low and careful. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need you to know, mine is the same. The food, the smell, everything. And the gentleman sitting next to me, white fellow, his tray is completely different. Fresh, clean, still warm. Felicity nodded. I noticed. This isn't random, is it? No, Felicity said quietly. It's not. Gerald sat back slowly. He looked at his tray one more time. Then he closed the lid and pushed it away. Felicity reached into the seat pocket, pulled out her notebook. Beneath the words, pattern of selectivity, she wrote a new entry in small, precise handwriting. Deliberate distribution. Spoiled meals isolated to passengers of color. Rows 18, 19, 22, 23, 24. Fresh meals served to rows 12, 14, 16, 20, 21. Same cart, same service window. Attendant Caldwell, sole distributor, left column. She paused, then added one more line. Verbal hostility when challenged, refusal to provide replacement, dismissive language with racial undertone. She closed the notebook, slid it back into the seat pocket, and for the first time since boarding, Felicity Foster's expression changed. Not anger, not sadness, something quieter than both, something colder. The look of a woman who has spent years building systems to catch exactly this, and just watch one break right in front of her daughter's eyes. She wasn't watching anymore. She was building a case. 10 minutes passed. The cabin settled into that quiet post-meal hum. Trays stacked, lights low. Most passengers zoned out into movies or sleep, but not Felicity, and definitely not Brenda, because Brenda Caldwell wasn't done. She came back down the aisle with a trash bag collecting empty trays. When she reached row 22, she stopped, looked at Felicity's tray, still untouched, lid closed, and let out a loud, theatrical sigh. You're not eating? No. Then give it back. I'm not leaving it there to stink up the cabin. Other passengers are complaining. Nobody was complaining. The only smell came from the food Brenda had served them. Felicity handed the tray back without a word. Nadia did the same. Brenda snatched both trays and tossed them into the trash bag hard enough to make the containers crack. Then she paused. Her eyes dropped to the seat pocket in front of Felicity. What's that? She was looking at the notebook. A book, Felicity said calmly. That's not a book. I saw you writing in it. Are you recording things about this flight? It's personal notes. Brenda's expression sharpened. She straightened her posture, crossed her arms. When she spoke again, her voice carried a new edge, the tone of someone who has decided to use whatever small authority they have like a weapon. Ma'am, I need you to put that away. Airline policy prohibits unauthorized documentation of crew operations during flight. If you're writing complaints, there's a formal process after landing. That wasn't a real policy. Felicity knew that better than anyone alive on that aircraft. She wrote half the airline's operational policies herself, but she said nothing. She simply slid the notebook deeper into the seat pocket. Thank you, Brenda said, voice dripping with false sweetness. Now, was there anything else, or are we done causing problems? Felicity met her eyes. We're fine. Brenda didn't leave. Instead, she looked down at Nadia's backpack, a small lavender bag tucked under the seat ahead. That bag needs to be fully under the seat. It's sticking out. That's a safety violation. It wasn't sticking out. It was tucked neatly beneath the seat, exactly where it should be. Nadia had placed it there carefully during boarding. It's under the seat, Felicity said. It's not far enough. I need it pushed all the way back, or I'll have to confiscate it and store it overhead. Nadia looked up at her mother. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with confusion. The quiet, sharp confusion of a child who knows something is unfair, but doesn't yet have the words for it. Felicity leaned forward and pushed the bag back an extra inch. It hadn't needed to move at all. There, she said. Better? Brenda stared at her for a long moment, then nodded curtly and moved on. But she came back, 5 minutes later. Ma'am, your seatbelt. It's fastened. I need to see it. Lift your cardigan, please. Felicity looked down. Her cream cardigan was draped over her lap, and the seatbelt was clearly clicked underneath, the buckle visible at the edge. But she lifted the fabric anyway, showed the buckle, said nothing. Brenda nodded again, left again, came back again, 3 minutes later. Is your phone in airplane mode? It's been in airplane mode since before takeoff. Can I see it? No. Brenda's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? You don't have the authority to inspect my personal device. I'm happy to show a member of the flight deck if there's a concern. Something flickered behind Brenda's eyes. Not embarrassment, anger. The specific kind of anger that comes when someone you've decided is beneath you talks back with precision. She leaned down, close enough that Felicity could smell her perfume. Sharp, floral, suffocating. Let me make something very clear. I am the senior attendant on this aircraft. If I determine that you are being disruptive, I can have you removed the moment we land. I can flag you for the no-fly list. I can make a call right now to have security waiting at the gate. So I suggest, very strongly, that you sit back, stay quiet, and stop making my job harder than it needs to be. She held Felicity's gaze for 3 long seconds, then smiled, that same brittle plastic smile, and walked away. Nadia's fingers tightened around her mother's hand. Mama, she whispered, why does she keep coming back? Felicity's voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. Because she wants us to be afraid, baby. That's all. Are you afraid? No. Nadia thought about that for a moment. Then she whispered, me neither. Across the aisle, Gerald Davis had been watching the entire sequence. Every visit, every fabricated violation, every word. His hands were gripping his armrest so hard his knuckles had gone pale. He spoke up, not loud, but firm enough to carry. Ma'am, she's not causing any disruption. She asked for a decent meal for her child. That's all she did. Brenda spun around. Her voice went sharp and cold. Sir, I wasn't talking to you. Mind your own business and stay in your seat. I am in my seat, and what I'm seeing from my seat isn't right. What you're seeing is a crew member doing her job. If you have a problem, you can file a complaint after we land. Until then, sit down. Gerald was already sitting down. He hadn't moved an inch. But the command was designed to humiliate, not to correct. 2 rows ahead, Diane Lawson, the white woman in 20A, turned in her seat. She'd been watching for a while, quietly, carefully. She held up her own tray container, clean, bright, still faintly warm. Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but she does have a point. Look at my meal, then look at hers. They're completely different. How is that possible if they came from the same cart? Brenda turned to Diane, and something remarkable happened. Her entire body language softened, shoulders down, voice gentle, hands uncrossed. Oh, I understand the concern, ma'am. Sometimes different batches get mixed in during catering. It's really just a quality control issue, nothing intentional. I'm sorry for the confusion. The shift was instantaneous and sickening, because Diane asked the exact same question Felicity had asked 5 minutes earlier, word for word. But because Diane was white, She got an explanation, an apology, a soft voice. Felicity got threats. Gerald got told to sit down. The entire cabin could feel it now. That thick, heavy silence that settles when everyone in the room knows something ugly is happening, but nobody is sure what to do about it. Then came the moment that changed everything. Nadia tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama, I'm hungry. Can I just try a little piece? Just the chicken?" Felicity hesitated. She looked at the closed tray Brenda had already taken. But Nadia had quietly pulled off a small piece of chicken before Felicity had closed the lid earlier, hidden it in a napkin on her lap. "Baby, no, don't eat that." Too late. Nadia had already put the piece in her mouth, chewed twice, swallowed. Within 15 minutes, the color drained from Nadia's face. She pressed her hand against her stomach. Her forehead was damp. "Mama, I don't feel good." Felicity's calm, that steady, unbreakable calm she had maintained through every insult, every threat, every fabricated violation, cracked. She stood up, walked directly to the galley at the front of economy where Brenda was leaning against the counter, scrolling through her phone. "My daughter is sick. She ate the food you served her. I need water, a sick bag, and I need to speak to whoever is in charge on this flight, right now." Brenda barely looked up from her phone. "Kids get airsick all the time. It's probably turbulence. Give her some water from the lavatory." "She's not airsick. She ate rotten food that you deliberately placed on her tray." Brenda pocketed her phone slowly. She turned to face Felicity fully, and with a tone so dismissive it bordered on cruelty, she said, "Ma'am, sit down. You're causing a scene in front of the other passengers. If your kid has a stomach ache, deal with it yourself. That's not my responsibility." Felicity didn't move. "I'm going to ask you one more time. I need to speak to the lead flight attendant." "You're speaking to her." That landed hard. Brenda was the senior crew member in this cabin. There was no one above her to appeal to, not until they landed. Felicity stood there for 3 long seconds. The galley lights buzzed above her head. The coffee maker gurgled. Brenda stared at her with flat, empty eyes. Then Felicity turned and walked back to her seat. As she passed row 19, Brenda muttered something to Shelby, the younger attendant. She said it under her breath, casually, like a throwaway joke between coworkers. Always the same ones causing drama. Give them an inch, they act like they own the whole damn plane. She didn't see the phone. Seat 19B. A college kid named Corey Wilson, 20 years old, phone in his lap, camera rolling, red dot blinking. He'd been recording for the last 6 minutes, every word, every expression, every ugly syllable, and Brenda Caldwell had absolutely no idea. Yo, I need to pause right here because, nah. A little girl just got sick from food that should have been in the trash. And this woman said, "Deal with it yourself?" On camera? Brenda, girl, you have no idea what's about to hit you. The plane touched down at Chicago O'Hare at 9:47 p.m. The wheels hit the tarmac with a hard jolt. Overhead bins rattled. A few passengers clapped, the way people do when they're just glad it's over. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Everyone stood at once. That familiar rush of bodies filling the aisle, reaching overhead, pulling bags down in a wave of impatience. But Felicity didn't move. She sat in 22A with Nadia leaning against her shoulder. The girl's face was pale. Her eyes were half closed. A thin layer of sweat still clung to her forehead. Felicity had one arm around her daughter and the other hand resting on the armrest, perfectly still. She waited. She waited until the cabin emptied row by row, until the overhead bins were hollow, until the aisle was clear and the only sound left was the low hum of the auxiliary power unit and the distant beep of a ground vehicle outside. Then she stood up. She took Nadia's hand, picked up the lavender backpack, and walked slowly toward the front of the aircraft. Brenda was standing near the forward galley, arms crossed, chatting with Shelby. She had that post-flight looseness, shoulders dropped, voice lazy, already mentally off the clock. She glanced at Felicity walking up the aisle and smirked. "Oh, you're still here? Thought you'd be first off the plane with all that complaining." Felicity didn't respond. She walked past Brenda without a word, past the first-class curtain, through the jet bridge, and stopped at the gate desk. A gate agent, young guy, maybe mid-20s, name tag reading Tyler, looked up. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Yes, I need you to call the station manager on duty. Right now, please." Tyler blinked. "Is there a problem with your flight?" "There is, and I'll explain everything, but I need the station manager here first." Something in her voice, not loud, not aggressive, just absolutely certain, made Tyler pick up the phone without another question. 4 minutes later, a man in a dark suit walked briskly down the corridor. Name tag, Douglas Bennett, station manager, O'Hare Hub. Tall, gray at the temples. The kind of guy who looked like he'd been solving airline problems since before most of his staff were born. "Ma'am, I'm Douglas Bennett. I understand there's a concern with your flight." "There is, several actually. But before I explain, I need you to hold the crew at the aircraft, specifically the senior economy attendant, Brenda Caldwell. She is not to leave the jet bridge until I've finished." Douglas frowned. "Ma'am, I'm happy to take your complaint, but I can't detain crew members based on a passenger request." Felicity reached into her cardigan pocket. She pulled out a badge, small, black leather fold. She opened it and held it up so Douglas could read it clearly. Pinnacle Atlantic Airlines, Corporate Operations Division, Felicity Foster, Regional Director of Operations. Douglas's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "You're Director Foster?" "Yes. We weren't told you were on this flight." "That's the point." Douglas straightened immediately. His entire posture changed, from polite but skeptical to fully at attention. He reached for his radio. "Hold the Flight 1482 crew at the jet bridge. All of them. Nobody leaves until I give clearance." The radio crackled back a confirmation. At that moment, Brenda Caldwell appeared at the end of the jet bridge, bag slung over her shoulder, jacket draped over her arm. She was laughing at something Shelby had said. Easy, relaxed, done for the night. Then she saw Douglas Bennett, standing stiff, radio in hand, and next to him, the woman from 22A, the woman she'd fed rotten food, the woman she'd threatened, the woman she'd told to sit down and deal with it, holding a corporate badge. Brenda's smile faded. Felicity turned to face her. When she spoke, her voice carried the full, quiet authority of someone who had spent 20 years climbing through every level of this airline, from ticket counter to regional command. "Miss Caldwell, my name is Felicity Foster. I'm the Regional Director of Operations for Pinnacle Atlantic Airlines. I oversee service compliance, crew conduct, and passenger experience across every domestic route, including this one." Brenda's bag slipped off her shoulder. She caught it awkwardly, her face drained of color, not slowly, not gradually, but all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. "I conducted an undercover quality audit on Flight 1482 this evening. During that audit, I personally witnessed discriminatory meal distribution based on race, verbal abuse directed at passengers of color, refusal to provide assistance to a minor experiencing a food safety emergency, and racially charged language used within earshot of passengers." Every word landed like a hammer on glass. Brenda's mouth moved, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted to Douglas, to Shelby, to the gate agent, back to Felicity, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Then a small voice came from below. Nadia, still pale, still holding her mother's hand. She looked up at Brenda with those wide, steady eyes and said 5 words. "My mom is your boss." The jet bridge went dead silent. Brenda stared at the girl, then at Felicity, then at the badge still open in her hand. Her mouth trembled, her eyes went glassy, and for the first time that entire evening, Brenda Caldwell had absolutely nothing to say. The silence lasted 5 full seconds. The only sound on that jet bridge was the distant whine of a ground vehicle reversing somewhere on the tarmac. Then Brenda broke. Wait, there's been a misunderstanding. Her voice came out high and thin, nothing like the sharp tone she'd used at 30,000 feet. The woman who had threatened to put Felicity on a no-fly list was now stuttering with her bag at her feet. I treat everyone the same. Ask anyone. Ask Shelby. Shelby, tell him. Shelby stood 3 steps behind her. She looked at the floor, didn't say a word. Miss Caldwell, Douglas Bennett said, level, controlled. I'm going to need you to stop talking. But I didn't do anything wrong. I said stop. Brenda's mouth snapped shut. Douglas turned to Felicity. Director Foster, what would you like to do? Felicity didn't hesitate. Suspend Miss Caldwell from all duties immediately. Collect her airport credentials tonight. Pull all meal distribution logs and catering manifests for Flight 1482. Secure the passenger manifest for witness interviews, and open a formal report with Human Resources before midnight. Douglas picked up his radio. Security to gate B12. Crew credential collection and escort. The radio crackled. Copy. 2 minutes. Brenda's face shifted from desperate to terrified. Escort? Like a criminal? I've been with this airline 11 years. You can't do this over a meal complaint. Miss Caldwell. Felicity's voice cut through the jet bridge. Quiet, precise, final. This is not about a meal complaint. You deliberately serve contaminated food to passengers based on the color of their skin. You verbally abused a mother in front of her child. You refused medical assistance to a 9-year-old who was vomiting. And you made a racist remark on a recorded device that you thought no one would hear. Brenda blinked. Recorded? A passenger in 19B captured your comments on video. I haven't seen it yet, but I expect it will confirm everything I witnessed personally. Whatever fight Brenda had left drained out through her shoes. She tried one last thing, the thing people always try when power has shifted and they're standing on the wrong side of it. She made it personal. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. Eyes wet, she stepped toward Felicity. I didn't know who you were. If I had known, I never would have. Please, I have 2 kids. I need this job. Felicity looked at her for a long moment. The jet bridge hummed. A plane taxied past the window, its lights sweeping across the walls. Then she spoke. Every word carried the weight of someone who had heard this exact excuse before. That's exactly the problem, Miss Caldwell. You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me like a human being. You shouldn't need to know my title to give my daughter safe food. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. Brenda opened her mouth. Nothing came out. 2 airport security officers appeared at the end of the jet bridge. Dark uniforms, radios clicking. They walked toward Brenda with calm, rehearsed pace. Ma'am, we need your crew badge and access credentials. Brenda's hands shook as she unclipped the badge from her lanyard. She handed it over. The officer placed it in a clear plastic bag. Please come with us. They walked her down the jet bridge, through the gate area, past the rows of empty seats, past the Hudson newsstand with its lights still on, past the janitor pushing a mop across the tile. She didn't look back. Meanwhile, something was already happening 3,000 miles away and moving fast. Corey Wilson, the 20-year-old college kid from seat 19B, was sitting at his own gate waiting for a connecting flight. His phone was in his hands. He watched the video once, then twice, then a third time. His thumb hovered over the upload button. He pressed it. Caption: the flight attendant on Pinnacle Atlantic just said this about black passengers. Caught it all. Watch till the end. Within 1 hour, 47,000 views. Within 3 hours, 280,000. By midnight, over 500,000 views and climbing. The hashtag Pinnacle Atlantic Racism hit trending on every major platform. And Brenda Caldwell, sitting alone in her Chicago hotel room, badge gone, career hanging by a thread, had no idea the world was already watching. Nadia, on the other hand, was in the back of a taxi heading to the nearest hospital, her head resting against her mother's arm. "Mama," she whispered, "is she going to get in trouble?" Felicity kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Yes, baby, she is." By morning, the story had a life of its own. Corey Wilson's video crossed 2 million views before sunrise. Every major news outlet in the country picked it up. CNN ran it on the morning loop. Fox covered it from the corporate accountability angle. Local Chicago stations led with it at 6 a.m. Helicopter footage of O'Hare, the Pinnacle Atlantic logo filling the screen. The headlines wrote themselves. Pinnacle Atlantic flight attendant caught on video making racist comments. Black passengers served rotten food while white passengers got fresh meals. Airline under fire after viral video exposes racial discrimination at 30,000 feet. Social media moved even faster. The hashtag Pinnacle Atlantic Racism was the #1 trending topic on 3 platforms. People were tagging the airline, tagging their senators, tagging the FAA. Screenshots of Brenda's face, frozen mid-sentence from Corey's video, were everywhere. And inside Pinnacle Atlantic's corporate headquarters in Atlanta, the lights were on before dawn. The internal investigation launched at 6:15 a.m. A team from Human Resources, Legal, and Operations pulled every record connected to Brenda Caldwell's 11-year career. Flight logs, performance reviews, passenger feedback files, crew incident reports. What they found made the situation worse, much worse. Brenda Caldwell had 6 prior complaints from passengers of color. 6, spanning 3 years. A black businessman on a Dallas route who reported that Brenda refused to serve him a drink, then served the white passenger beside him immediately. A Latina mother who filed a written complaint saying Brenda told her to control your kids or fly Spirit in front of the entire cabin. A young black couple on a honeymoon trip who said Brenda moved their bags from the overhead bin to make room for a white passenger's luggage without asking. An elderly black woman who reported that Brenda ignored her call button for 20 minutes, then told her, "You'll wait like everyone else," while no one else was waiting. 2 more, similar patterns, same language, same contempt. 6 complaints, all documented, all filed through proper channels, and every single one had been buried. A shift supervisor named Dale Prescott, Brenda's direct manager for the past 4 years, had reviewed each complaint personally, and each time he marked the file with the same note: investigated, no actionable evidence, case closed. He never interviewed witnesses, never pulled camera footage, never spoke to the passengers who filed the complaints. He just signed off and moved on. Dale Prescott was fired by noon. Brenda Caldwell was terminated at 2 p.m. with cause. No severance, no rehire eligibility, no letter of recommendation. Her employee file was flagged permanently. 11 years with the airline, and she walked out with nothing but a cardboard box and a security escort to the parking garage. But the consequences didn't stop at Pinnacle Atlantic's front door. By Wednesday, Gerald Davis, the black passenger from the aisle seat, had contacted a civil rights attorney. 2 other affected passengers from Flight 1482 joined him. Together, they filed a formal discrimination complaint with the U.S. Department of Transportation. The DOT opened an investigation within 48 hours. Federal investigators arrived at Pinnacle Atlantic's catering facility in Atlanta on Thursday morning. They reviewed food handling procedures, distribution protocols, and storage records. They interviewed ground crew, catering staff, and flight operations managers. What they found confirmed what Felicity had documented in her notebook. The spoiled meals were not a catering error. They were pulled from a batch flagged for disposal, containers that had exceeded their safe service window by more than 12 hours. Someone had placed them back on the active cart, and the distribution pattern on Flight 1482 showed that those expired meals were served exclusively to passengers of color. The DOT issued a preliminary citation to Pinnacle Atlantic for food safety violations and discriminatory service practices. A full federal review was ordered. On Friday, Pinnacle Atlantic's CEO, a man named Arthur Graves, held a nationally televised press conference. He stood behind a podium with the airline's logo on it. Blue suit, no smile. Reading glasses he kept taking on and off like he didn't know what to do with his hands. He apologized. Not the vague, corporate kind of apology where no one actually says what they did wrong. A real one. He named Brenda Caldwell's actions specifically. He named the failure of internal oversight. He named Dale Prescott. He acknowledged that 6 complaints have been ignored over 3 years and that the system designed to protect passengers had failed. He announced a series of reforms. Mandatory bias training for all cabin crew. Not optional, not elective, mandatory. A new anonymous passenger complaint hotline with independent review. And a quarterly undercover audit program modeled directly on the system Felicity Foster had built, now expanded to every route in the airline's network. Felicity herself was invited onto a major network news panel that same week. She sat under studio lights across from 2 journalists and a civil rights analyst. She didn't talk about herself. She talked about the passengers who had filed complaints before her, the 6 people whose voices had been buried by a system that chose convenience over accountability. I had the title to make something happen, she said, but those 6 passengers before me, they had the courage to speak up without any title at all, and nobody listened. That quote was replayed on every network for the next 3 days. Meanwhile, Brenda Caldwell's name had become synonymous with the scandal. Her social media accounts went private within hours of the video going viral. A reporter from a Chicago station tracked her down for a brief sidewalk interview outside her apartment. She wore sunglasses, kept her head down, said only one thing before getting into her car. I was misunderstood. The video doesn't show the full picture. But the full picture was already out. Millions had seen it, and no amount of sunglasses could make it disappear. Felicity also filed a personal civil lawsuit against Brenda for emotional distress and medical expenses related to Nadia's food poisoning. The hospital report from that first night in Chicago, documenting Nadia's symptoms, the diagnosis of bacterial food contamination, and the recommended treatment, was entered into the court record. And Corey Wilson, the college kid from 19B who pressed upload on a connecting flight, a media company specializing in social justice content, saw his video. They offered him a summer internship covering stories exactly like this one. Stories about people who saw something wrong and decided not to look away. He accepted. 6 months later, things looked different. Felicity Foster was promoted to Vice President of Customer Experience at Pinnacle Atlantic Airlines. It was the highest passenger-facing role in the company, and for the first time in the airline's history, it was held by a black woman. She didn't move into a corner office and disappear behind closed doors. She kept flying. Economy class, random routes, no badge, no announcement, just her notebook and her eyes. Some habits don't change when the title does. The Foster Fairness Initiative, the passenger advocacy program she built in the weeks after Flight 1482, became the gold standard in the industry. It started as an internal reform at Pinnacle Atlantic, a system of anonymous audits, independent complaint reviews, and zero-tolerance discrimination policies. Within 3 months, 2 other major airlines adopted it. Within 6 months, a congressional subcommittee invited Felicity to testify about implementing equity-based service standards across the entire U.S. aviation industry. She testified for 45 minutes. No notes, no script, just her voice and her experience. Gerald Davis, the man from the aisle seat who spoke up when no one else would, wrote Felicity a handwritten letter after the trial. 2 pages, blue ink, neat handwriting. He thanked her not just for what she did on the plane, but for what she did after. "You made me feel like my voice mattered," he wrote, "for the first time in a long time." Felicity framed that letter. It hung on the wall behind her desk. Not her diplomas, not her awards, not her corporate commendations. A handwritten letter from a stranger who had been brave enough to speak when it cost him nothing to stay silent. The civil rights complaint filed with the Department of Transportation resulted in a formal consent decree. Pinnacle Atlantic agreed to 5 years of federal oversight, mandatory quarterly equity reports, and a $2 million fund for passenger advocacy programs. The airline's catering protocols were completely overhauled. No expired food would ever be loaded onto an active service card again. Dale Prescott, the shift supervisor who buried 6 complaints, never worked in aviation again. Last anyone heard, he was managing a storage facility outside of Memphis. He declined every interview request. Brenda Caldwell tried to get hired at 3 different regional airlines over the following year. Each one ran a background check. Each one found the DOT citation, the viral video, and the federal investigation tied to her name. Each one said no. She gave one more interview, a podcast this time, small audience. She cried during the recording, said she'd been made an example of, said the system failed her. She never once said she was wrong. And Nadia? Nadia went back to school that fall with a new hobby. She started a journal, not for homework, for observations. She'd sit in the cafeteria and write down how people treated each other, who got picked last, who got ignored, who got laughed at when they weren't looking. Her teacher found the journal one afternoon and asked her about it. Nadia shrugged. "My mom taught me that you can't fix what you don't see, so I'm practicing seeing." She was 9 years old. One evening, a few weeks after the promotion, Felicity was packing for another audit flight. Nadia sat on the bed watching her fold the cardigan into her carry-on. "Mama, where are you going this time?" "Denver." "Can I come?" Felicity smiled. "It's a school night, baby." Nadia thought about that for a second, then grinned. "Fine, but next time, can we audit the ice cream shop instead?" Felicity laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and warm. Deal. Look, this story, fiction. But that feeling in your chest when Brenda dropped that tray, that's real. That happens every day. No cameras, no boss watching. So the real question is simple. When you see it happen, what do you do?